Okay. The exam is nothing to be afraid of, and it happens this Friday across the street. I think 123 is the large hall in Ackerson. We will not be alone. There are other courses that are taking their exams in the same room at the same time. And I will come in and start you, but I will not be there through the exam. Now, the exam is 3 hours, and I urge you to take all the time. I'll even be there a half hour earlier if you want to start. I'm afraid it will not be possible to stay over the 3 hours because these are proctors that are going to be there, and they have to go on with their own business. But it should be more than enough time. And there are some of you who will be done very early, others that will be lingering on. If a few ridiculous things to say at this stage of the game to you, but you are better. Bring a number 2 pencil. Your papers will be pre-slugged. We'll have your names on. It is better if you make very light marks on the paper and then go back and darken them. Keep in the boundaries, because even at the last exam, when I went back, there were some that were misgraded because you went out of the boundaries. If you go out of the boundaries, it codes you as wrong. And I don't know if these proctors are going to sit and go over each paper the way I do. So make sure you do it correctly. Another way to do it is to do it on another sheet first and then go back and put in the right answer. You're usually right with your first answer. And again, I hate to tell you this, now you're going to blame me if you get ones wrong, but sitting there agonizing, you either know it or you don't. All right? It's 100 items, and some of you might be thinking, oh, I don't want 100. 100, you get one. All right, well, there's nothing there yet. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. With 100, you get 1 point for each one. It's much better than giving you 50. There's too much hanging on each one at 50. Very few, although we will go over, if that comes back up, you alert me, and I'll put it there again. Although we are going to go over some content, there are very few questions that ask an answer in content you could find in the book. Most of the questions are analytic. In other words, you have to process the information you had in class. And the same as with your paper. Some of your papers were not analytic. That cost you a lot of points. So it's a matter of taking the information and massaging it in your mind to come up with the right answer. That, with those of you who do not have English as your first language, will create problems. But I can't, I don't do it on purpose. You can't go through this program without being analytic. You're going to be asked, what's analytic? Well, you'll be given a case scenario and then asked what you should do. And I told you before, always among the distractors, there are 2 distractors which are nonsense. Right away, you know, they couldn't work, or you should know. and then two that are pretty good, but they're distinguished on a principle. And that's where you'll get hung up, the principle. And you have to remember that the things that we talked about in class, in this culture, confidentiality is valued. It's not only valued, it's legislated. In this culture, it is expected you do not have to die in pain or mental anguish. That usually amounts to the use of medication. I do not believe in medication as the answer to all your problems, but in this culture, we believe there is, we have no right to expect you to die in pain unless you want to. And we also believe in consumerism and that you have the freedom of choice as to the way you are to be handled. So even if you had a living will that is outdated and, as you read in your book, today many healthcare providers and the courts do not honor a living will that is more than 5 years old because medical science has advanced so in the last 5 or so years that there's so much new. You couldn't possibly it is possible you would not have made the same decision. But if you have a patient who had an old living will and you saw that that patient vehemently opposed any life-sustaining treatment, especially when there is no brain activity or no hope for cognitive capacity left, even if it's 10 years old, I would have to fight for that patient, because that doesn't change. What does change is the technology, all right? So with that, let's start, and we said there would be very little from the first half of the course. Some, but little. You should know about reimbursement. That was a major thrust of this course. You have to know about it to activate your role as advocate for the patient. You should be able to tell them how many days, or at least that they should talk to someone who understands their insurance plan, because the fact that they're being encouraged to leave in 3 days saves them a lot of days. And many insurance plans, not Medicare or Medicaid, but many of the proprietary insurance plans have a cap on the number of days you can spend in the hospital or the amount of money. And as a nurse, you have the responsibility to explain this to your patients. When you tell your patient that they're going to be discharged tomorrow or the next day, and you see a look in their eye, you are trained to pick up that look. And you ask them, what's your thought about this? You never give them the answer. What's your thought about it? Well, I don't feel very strong and I have no one at home. You've been going to physical therapy and you've been walking and stair climbing, and I think you can get up from the chair to go to the stove to make yourself a cup of tea. Don't you think, yes, that's possible? All right, you also know that there may be a cap on the amount of money or the number of days you have covered in your plan. Now, you might not know it, but you know that basic model. So you could ask them, are you aware of the limits of your plan? No, I'm not. Let me reach out to social service and have them come right up. So you should know something about reimbursement. We talked about several kinds of reimbursement, Medicare, Medicaid, which are the major social programs in the United States. Social programs. They're offered through the government, Medicare, the federal, Medicaid, the state government. Medicare reimburses the same to everyone. CAID does not. It's based on state choice always. In our country, states' rights prevail, except when money is being given by the federal government. Then the feds step in to some degree. Not to mandate every aspect of the program, but they do have some rights when they're paying for it. All right, Medicare and Medicaid are Titles 18 and 19. Know that. Title 18 and 19 of the Social Security Act. Care and CAID were legislated in 1965, and I don't think that's on the exam, I can't remember, but you should know. 65. It's not an experimental program anymore, and it served the U.S. population well. We didn't have people living into their 90s in 1965. 1965, I used to look at my patients who were 60 and think, oh my God, will I ever be that old? All right? Medicare has made a big difference in the life of the American public, and so has Medicaid. Now, there's a lot of discussion about the dramatic increase in diabetes, about 300% increase in diabetes, most notably among minority populations. That would never have happened. Not that the diabetes would have happened, but the case finding would never have happened without Medicaid, because Medicaid provides for people can go when they don't feel well. And the poor have a much higher incidence of going into the medical system than middle-class America or the rich. Very few rich left, quite frankly. But the poor have a history of going into the system when something bothers them. And a lot of this increase in certain diseases has been an increase in case finding. It would have been there before, I feel. Maybe not as high because of diet and things which are not to our best advantage, but an awful lot of illness today has been due to good case finding, which has only been possible due to Medicaid. All right, so Care and CAID are your major social programs and are facilitated by amendments to the Social Security Act. The Social Security Act became law in 1932, before World War II. And when FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was president, all right, 1932. And that gave rise to a lot of things to grow the economy, and finally in 41, Pearl Harbor. All right. Keep these patterns in your mind, because patterns do repeat themselves. We have other social welfare programs. We have CHIP, that's the Child Health Program, and that's from the federal government, but it's a little bit different in each state. In New Jersey, it covers children to 400% of the poverty level. Hey, what do you want, folks? 400%. This is high. And there's Family First, New Jersey, and there are a whole range of other programs. Unfortunately, you have to apply for all of them. Even for Medicaid, you have to apply for it. And this has always been a criticism of the program. I feel it's a big criticism that you have to in some way apply before you get it. And so most people are caught when they go in for health care, and they're enrolled. All right, and that way they're paid for. There was talk of allowing kids to apply in school. And I don't know how far that ever got. The best way to find out would be asking the school nurse. But there was talk of that. You have to apply for these programs. So in New Jersey, Medicaid is all managed care. People who are on Medicaid are on welfare. That's the basic program. And they're all managed care. They have to select from one of a range of managed care programs. No one program is foisted on them or is demanded. That, again, is the Americans' freedom of choice. There are a whole bunch of programs, and it is up to the Medicaid recipient to pick one. And they can change every day. I can only change once a year, but they can change every day if they want. And you see a lot of changing as people go to different clinics and things. All right, so there's managed care, which is an umbrella over programs. It's one of two types. The other is indemnity. There are two types, broad types of health care programs, managed care and indemnity, and under that there are a slew of social welfare programs, Medicare, paid, CHIP, Family First, everything under them. All right? And that still does not cover all Americans. Now, how many Americans would be covered if everyone that qualified for Medicaid applied for it? I don't know. All right. But right now, we have 40 million, I think that's it, uncovered people still. And ACA 2010, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it, will cover those as of 2014. I think that's when all these people will come in. And who's going to pay for it, how it's going to be paid is another issue, but they'll all come in. And they will be required to subscribe to a managed care plan. Why managed care? Because managed care is the best buy for your buck. The other type of care is indemnity care. And indemnity care is one where everything you use is paid. There is some restriction on the amount that's paid, but for the most part, it's fully paid, except for a minor deductible. All right? So indemnity is things are paid individually. You have an x-ray, it's paid. You have a physical, it's paid. You have a gastroenterological procedure, a sigmoidoscopy or whatever, it's paid. All right? It's paid directly, and as the consumer, you might not even know, although most plans send you a summary, but it's not necessary for you to know how much. Each thing is paid that you have done. In managed care, you pay a sum every month and all your needs are paid. But there are some restrictions on the providers you can go to, the hospitals you can go to. In many of them, you're expected to go where the plan tells you, particularly in the social welfare programs. Now, there are managed care plans through industry that are very high-end, and you can go to any hospital or any provider. You can go out of plan. That's what it's called, all right? They cost more. Now, is that discriminatory? You're not going to be asked that in the exam, but it's a good issue. And nobody picked that up to do a paper. is it discriminatory? It's good business, all right? These plans have providers who are credentialed, who are valid, competent providers, but they're providers who maybe are new to the field, are just setting up their practice, so they'll provide the functions for less dollars. And that's when you get a list and you pick your provider from the list. So anyway, what the managed care plans are doing is shifting the risk to the provider and the insureds and away from the service provider. They're shifting the risk to the provider and to the insured. All right? You can do things more economically if you select from a list. You can do things more economically if you use in-plan services. That's what's called shifting the risk. In indemnity, people use what they want, and the plan pays them directly. In indemnity, you can make a lot of money by ratcheting up the number of visits, the number of blood works, the number of chest x-rays. For instance, a provider who, and I've seen much of this in the last few years, will have someone come in with high blood pressure. The provider will say, I want you to come back next week. And next week, they tell them, come back the next week. Every one of those visits is billed individually and holds a price. Whereas if you're in managed care, you can go back 1,000 times, there's the one fee. So there's a tendency to educate and make the consumer more savvy about what's happening. All right, or even to have their neighbor take their blood pressure. So those are the reimbursement models for the U.S. Know the characteristics of managed care, know the types in general. Indemnity is on its way out because it's just too expensive, although some corporations still have it. And even if they're phasing in managed care for newer employees, I think of Sharing Plow, which used to be a union. It merged with Pfizer years ago, and then it merged with Merck. It's on its third merger. And their original employees, the Sharing Plow employees, still have very generous indemnity coverage. Anything you want, it's covered. And they know that they wouldn't get that anywhere else, and this was a negotiating strategy. As they merged with each company, the union fought to keep their health benefits the same, all right? And I guess with time, there won't be many of those original employees left. All right, any questions on reimbursement? No? Okay. And know that reimbursement plans differ. Managed care plans differ. They differ on the co-payment, on the deductible. In some, you have to pay co-payment when you go to make a visit to a provider. For some, it's nothing, like Medicaid. For other people, it may be $5, $10. I pay $20. All right, but you pay something. In some instances, until you get the full cost of your services paid, you have to pay X number of dollars yourself. So there are, in some plans, you can go out of plan. In some plans, you can go to a specialist directly. You don't have to go to a primary care provider. All of these are different approaches to make the plan more economical. All right, so know that. Civics. Know how a bill becomes a law. It's in your book, in a chart, but you should know. Anyone who doesn't know, please feel responsible as an American to find out, because it does work. You get a glimmer of an idea. You go to your legislator or one of his staff. They listen, and if it sounds reasonable, although you should come armed with the information about who would like this, etc., sounds reasonable, they'll listen to you. They may even draft it into a bill. They have the resources. From there, it goes to a first reading. It goes to committee, and on and on. You should know how a bill becomes a law. Also know that a bill, even if it goes through the whole sequence, through both houses, and there are two houses on the federal and the state level. The state level is a mirror image of the federal level. Different politics, but same process, same. And it's worked, for 300 years, so I think it's going to keep working, all right? I forget, 1776, is that? No, not quite 300. But it's worked for a long time. It will continue to work. So know the process. It's critical that you know the process. Also know, at the end of all this stuff, the chief executive can veto it, and that's the governor or the president can just veto it. But if the Congress or the state legislature feels that firmly, they can override the veto. And how do you override a veto? You find out. It takes a certain percent of both houses, and you can override a veto. Political action committees, it's up there, right? Yep. Are critical in today's politics. They're interest groups, and they raise money to support the campaign of the candidates that are supportive of their agenda, and it educates people to the agenda, to the political issues. So it's education and financial support. That's what they do, those two things. They do not lobby in and of themselves, but they often hire lobbyists. And a big L lobbyist has to be registered with the legislature. You just can't walk in and see people. But as a private citizen, you can make an appointment with your legislature and go talk to them. I've done it many times, and it is amazing how much they listen to you. And I gave you the instance of they may let you in to talk to them and then say, wait a minute, I want to get Johnny Jones. He covers this area. Well, Johnny Jones, quite frankly, the legislature is going to listen to their staff more than anyone else to the substance of a bill. So value the staff that you're directed to. Political action committees make their money by soliciting it directly. They may not take money that you don't wish to go. Like the unions have political action committees. They don't just take the money out of the union coffers. They ask the members to donate. All right? Last night I got 3 calls. I'm getting sick of them. At least they weren't robocalls. You know what robocalls are? Those calls you pick up and there's a minute or two you hear nothing. Then you hear the machine go on and they start. These were people from the American Nurses Association, from the American Association of University Professors, and from the Heart Association, all asking for money for next next November's race, which is going to be a big one. There's no president elected, but much of the Congress and the legislators' time is up. So they're already quaking in their boots about that election. And let's say the American Heart Association, if it has a PAC, it's separate from the main association. It's insulated. So that PAC monies stand all alone and are just for political purposes, for nothing else. The Joint Conference Committee, what is that? Come on, you got to think too. I was up thinking until 2 a.m., yeah.
They settle discrepancies?
Yes, yes. You have to have a bill go through both houses in order to be passed. It can be the one bill starting through the other house, or it can be two separate bills. But if they wind up at the end and there are, as your classmate said, discrepancies, a joint conference committee made up of members of both houses tries to iron this out, and if the discrepancies are too big, the bills have to go through both houses again. All right? Executive orders, what's that? Come on, executive orders. I told you the governors of New Jersey have used that a few times on behalf of nursing. I told you Bill Clinton used it his first day in office, yeah.
In order for policy change by the governor of the president.
A policy change based on the order of the president or the governor alone. It's a very provocative thing. They are overriding the authority of the legislature or of the Congress. Bill Clinton did away with the gag rule. Remember? That's that no health care provider who's receiving $1 of federal funds could tell a woman that abortion is an option for her. It absolutely devastated Planned Parenthood because they get Title 31. I'm not going to ask you the title, but they get monies from the federal government, and as soon as that went through, they couldn't mention, you can't even mention the A word. You can't do it. As soon as he became president, he rescinded that entirely. And he also rescinded the policy about gays in the military. He put into place don't ask, don't tell, which was not proper. It's gone, but it was a first step towards freedom of gays in the military. He did that by executive order. And there was no squealing from the Congress. I think they knew time had come, and it had to be. So, but in other days, they might have yelled and screamed a little that you're violating states' rights. There was no yelling and screaming. That was interesting. In New Jersey, one of our governors signed over the responsibility for home health aides to the Board of Nursing. They used to be controlled by the Department of Institutions and Agencies, and nursing in New Jersey went to the governor and said, listen, everybody else in nursing is under our authority. No one understands the service better than us. Let me take care of it. And the governor signed legislation to move them over. Nobody complained, and they're still there today. Okay, that means all assistants to nurses are under the Board of Nursing, under the Nursing Practice Act. All right, leadership. At least look at the table in your book, which compares transactional and transformational leadership. Transformational leadership, transactional leadership is leadership by fiat. I said it's this way, so that's the way you're going to do it, by a leader. Transformational leadership is more having the leader a participant in the process with the followers. Having the followers assume roles in the process that are suited to their capabilities. So it's not prescribed that you're going to have 5 people and 3 of them are going to do this and 2 that. Transformational leadership assumes that there is more stability. There's not much stability, but there's more stability in the people than in the organization, which is true today, and I think you see them. You can't even guarantee yourself a job for very long. Under leadership, we talked about change, and we said there are 2 types, linear and non-linear. And most of the models you talk about today are still linear. We moved from planning to execution. The one type that was not linear was chaos theory. Remember chaos theory? And that was developed through the Sloan School at MIT. I don't think that little tidbit's in your book. I'm not going to ask it either. I shouldn't keep telling you, but I'm not going to ask it. But the Sloan School is one of the preeminent business schools in the United States. Wharton, probably Sloan, and Harvard, the 3 biggest business schools. And Senge is a professor in Sloan at MIT, and he developed a theory known as chaos theory. He said things do not proceed along a straight line, so don't operate assuming that. He says that you're not really part of the solution, you're part of the problem. He has a lot of unique attitudes towards change, which make it non-linear. In other words, we don't go from A to B to C. We're dancing all over the map. And there is a journal, Chaos Theory in Nursing. It's published through faculty, editor and the prime authors are faculty at Western New England University. And it's worth getting and reading if you have time. Some very interesting perspectives on change and how it occurs. For instance, you don't get a medal for putting up with a bad situation. And if you're caught in a bad situation, it's your fault because you tolerated it. All right, and we did look at some case examples of that during the course. All right, nursing organizations, why are they necessary? In the U.S., they're critical because as soon as you get your NCLEX, you pass your NCLEX RN, you get your license, you're out there alone. No matter what your boss says, be a good fella or a good little girl and do this, and I'll take care of you. I have insurance. Hogwash. You are responsible for what you do. And the nursing organizations do several things for you. They develop leadership. If you participate, you will surface to a leadership position. They provide CEUs, continuing education units, and you can pick and choose what fits your practice and take them through there, and it provides peer review, particularly through its certification opportunities. Additionally, it provides other nurses to talk to. You think you're going crazy, that this shouldn't be the way it is in your workplace? Talk to peers. It's peer support through the Nurses Association. They'll tell you how to handle these situations and what to do to make them better. All right? So it's a group of people who all seek personal responsibility for their practice. And there are generic organizations that cover the whole span of nursing, and usually they're responsible for some disciplinary actions. They're responsible for the code of ethics. They're responsible for developing standards. In this state, it's the New Jersey State Nurses Association. Then you have specialist societies, like the New Jersey League for Nursing is responsible really for nursing education and for public health nursing. You have endless specialty societies. The Nurses in Emergency Practice, OR practice, gastroenterology. If you want to look over the whole span of them, go Google it, nursing organizations. They'll probably lead you into the ANA site, and they have a listing. And then each one of those associations has a homepage of its own. Go to that homepage. The important thing is they all come together to develop their practice standards through ANA. That's quite remarkable. And years ago, they were all different. They're not all different now. They all come together under ANA. A real wonderful happening. Any questions on organizations? And organizations do a lot of their work as coalitions today. Coalitions. That's when several organizations come together and work towards the same purpose. Okay, I'm trying to think. There's a coalition in primary care. There is NAFASNO, National Federation of Specialty Nurses, and that's a federation of a lot of different specialty groups. They meet once a year, and they discuss things which are of general value to all nursing. And all of these organizations throw either money in the pot or give effort to have those things happen. Okay, theory. You all know the meta-paradigm, right? What's the meta-paradigm? The four elements that every nursing theory addresses. What are they? I'm listening. It was one of your questions in your midterm, man, health, society, and nursing. And they're different. What is man and what is his responsibilities will differ in a self-care framework a la Orem to Rogers' Science of Unitary Man framework. All right? And what I've been telling you all along, more or less, really, socializing you into my preferred framework, I believe that our marching orders come from the client. All right. We're not empowered to tell them what to do. We're empowered to educate them and then see what they want done. It's a big difference. And it builds on the freedom which is inherent in our practice and in our society. Now, years ago, the doctor told the patient what to do. And if they didn't do it, they were sort of a bad patient. That sickens me, the thought. First place, I don't have time for all these children. They're like children. You tell them what to do. I don't have time. And you're not going to have time, because there's a surplus of nurses right now, but when we get X number of million people coming into the system, you better ask them what they want done. All right? First place, you're not going to understand everyone's culture. And secondly, it's their choice, not your right to tell them what to do. All right? Nursing theorists, what I would suggest is that you just read over the chart, and we've been over this a few times, just like you know, Callista Roy, God bless her, she's still churning out the stuff. She's at Boston College, and she's a nun, and she's into adaptation. And when you read, I hope some of you have read more than the chart I made up, because if you go read her work, it's fascinating. And she talks about an adaptive shield around the patient, and when the health problems become too much, it starts to penetrate that field and make a person sick and frail and unable. And it's nursing's work to strengthen that shield through knowledge, through medicine, through whatever. All right? So she has, yeah. Oh, thank you. Now, the rest of you didn't even see that. You must be really looking close, huh? Okay, thanks. All right, so read over the theorists, at least. Orem is self-care. Henderson is a generic philosophy. Philosophy precedes theory. You need a philosophy under the theory. And the two greatest philosophers in nursing were Nightingale and Henderson. They're very similar, but they're not. Pieces are similar. Nightingale felt that the doctor was always right. She wouldn't even, when she went to Scutari, touch a patient, although it was obvious what they needed, until the doctor said, you may do it. That was her philosophy. And she was an environmentalist. She believed in fresh air, clean sheets, and nutritious food. And it did turn around the statistics. She was right. But some of her ideas were a bit more crazy. And she was famous in a lot of areas in police medicine, institutional practice. She was the development of hospitals. She was famous in a lot of areas. And after her success in Scutari, she did not come home. We went over her history. One of the great things about her, she did not believe in any school of nursing being dependent on hospitals. That was her big treasure, her big contribution. We didn't listen. And when Elizabeth Blackwell, the physician from Massachusetts, I'm not going to ask you her name either, but when the physician from Massachusetts contacted Nightingale and said, can we hire 3 of your best nurses to come over and establish nursing education here? I'm a physician, and I can't survive without crackerjack nurses. I'm sure she didn't use those terms. But they came over, and immediately the schools were established in hospitals, which was our doing in, all right? Because, and we went over that, nurses became the servants of hospitals and provided a lot of the labor to take care of the sick. All right, some other theorists, maybe Martha Rogers, I don't know. There is a matching piece on the exam. I can't remember who I put in, but Rogers is the one heavily based on the natural science, particularly physics, and believed in circadian rhythms and all sorts of fascinating things, and There is a lot of research that supports her theory, and a lot of things that still occur in present day, God bless you, medicine and nursing that are outcomes of her theory. And her theory was particularly promulgated at NYU. And even today, I don't believe NYU is totally based on Rogerian theory. You have a few of her disciples hanging out there yet, but she's gone by the wayside, and it's a shame. All right, another, just giving you ideas. She believed that as time passed, people disengaged. And this is very much like Erickson's theory. You studied Erickson, I'm assuming, in lifespan. You have to have studied Erickson. And he believes as you go on towards the era of generativity and old age, you disengage. She believed in this, and so she was a composite of many theorists. And so those who practice according to her theory purposely disengage the person from life before death. All right? Private rooms close to the nurse's station, very limited visitors until right before death. Probably it's one person who you see as your closest. Fascinating how her theories can actually be activated into practical use. Legislation, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, we talked about that. Workers' comp. What is workers' comp? That's when a person gets injured at work, and by accepting workers' comp, the worker says that there is no culpability on the part of either the employer or the employee. We give up looking for wrong. All right? But the employer will take care of the medical bills of the employee, and sometimes in very significant injuries, there may be a cash settlement that's negotiated. I had a father who had many workers' comp, well, three workers' comp cases. He was a sheet metal worker and splintered. They were not the guards and the protective equipment in those days that there is today. And he suffered splinters in the eye. Sounds bad, I know, but thank God there are doctors who take care of this. And each case was a workers' comp. And I don't think he ever got any settlements, but his medical bills were taken care of. And those were in the days when there was no health care insurance. So it was important to have the injury taken care of. And those were the workers' comp settlements. Workers' comp, since the turn of the century, since 15, requires a nurse case manager. Very futuristic. A nurse case manager is the only program I know of that requires a nurse case manager. Delegation is going to be important for you during your life in nursing. And I think the most important thing for you to realize is delegation has to do with your responsibility to the patient. And it has to do with competency. Don't look at skill level. That's another way to put it, competency. You will be required, where there is someone who's under your charge. Now, you're not going to go out and immediately be a supervisor. We know that. But you will go out eventually and be an RN. And there are nurses' aides under you. And the management, the boss, will tell you they're prepared to do A, B, and C. If you accept that, you're a fool. You want to watch them do something first. Or if they're a little bit shaky, like a lot of these people are, they don't feel in control. You want to let them watch you. All right, let's say a catheterization. You know what a catheterization is? When you put, you do know? Say yes, raise your hands if you know. No? That's when you put a tube in the bladder to siphon off the urine. Either to get a sample that's sterile for laboratory purposes, or to aid a person who can't bleed. Some people have problems with the bladder or with the sphincter, or it could be neurological, but nurses have to do catheterizations. In my day, which was a lot of days ago, only RNs did this. But now I know aides are trained to do these things. If I got an aid, because no procedure is totally safe without you making it safe. If you screw up a catheterization, and I know the bladder is not sterile, but if you use an unsterile catheter, you could spread an infection, you could do trauma. If you can't get it in, there are techniques for visualizing the meatus. That's the sphincter where you put in the tube. And before I would let an aide touch a patient, I'd say, come on in and watch me, I'm going to do one. Second step, let me watch you. Third, you're on your own. Because then I can't believe you know what you're doing. So your responsibility is always to the patient, and I don't believe anything should be left to chance. All right, we move on to a discussion of catheters. A discussion of catheters in and of itself is a big issue. All right, the law. A lot of the questions will deal with the law. And informed consent, you know that informed consent is the business of the person who is doing a procedure to get the informed consent. So that would usually be the physician, the advanced practice nurse, the sometimes the physiotherapist, whoever. It is not your responsibility to obtain the informed consent that you're going to do with people. And it's your responsibility to make sure the patient knows, the patient has been educated, the patient wants the procedure. How many times do nurses go in to a patient? They don't know they're going to have a procedure. They don't want it done. And here comes the provider all gowned up, ready to do it. That's illegal. It's your responsibility to advocate and protect the patient. But it is the provider's responsibility, the primary provider, to get the informed consent. All right, whistleblower, we talked about them last week, and we said that a whistleblower has to be absolutely confident. They have the whole story. They use every internal opportunity for grievance. You don't whistleblow and jump outside the system prematurely or in a cavalier fashion. You have to be sure things are going to be better after the whistleblowing rather than worse. We talked about elderly people, frail people, nursing home residents not getting fed, right? Could it be there's nothing on that tray they like? Could it be nobody's asked them? Could it be they start to eat voraciously if they had anything there that was palatable? That's not a whistleblower wasn't an attempt to make the nutritional program better. All right, so you have to be careful about whistleblowing. You have to make sure that you know this is a justified whistleblower issue. But whistleblowers are protected from prosecution, and their jobs are protected. However, and their jobs are protected, they're protected from prosecution, and their identity is protected. No one should know who a whistleblower was. But we all know that information tends to get out. It's not right. What is your recourse if somehow somebody gets wind of this and turns you in? What is your recourse then? Well, my advice is to avoid whistleblowing unless you feel it's a situation of dire consequence, and unless you're ready to leave your job if things go negatively. Does that sound logical? What is a tort? You look it up. It's among your list. Just like battery, libel, slander, just read the list in your book. There's assault and battery, not abuse. Assault is the threat. Battery is the actual physical contact, which goes within this paradigm. When you look at these definitions, look like libel, and slander. What is the difference? There is a slim but very real difference. The Nursing Practice Act is the legislation that proscribes and prescribes nursing. The purpose of the Nursing Practice Act is to protect the public. All right, it protects the public that uses your service by guaranteeing competency. And this competency thing is becoming a big deal right now. For instance, hospitals are required to retest their nurses for competency periodically. It doesn't come from the Board of Nursing, it comes from the Joint Commission, I believe, but we're not investigating that to that extent. Just know, hospitals must re-examine their staff for competency periodically. For instance, St. Peter's in New Brunswick is renting the Rutgers Simulation Skills Lab, paying Rutgers a fee for use of it, where they will put their staff through competency testing periodically. Because if you're incompetent and there's a suit, you have it if you can't prove your staff are competent. That's a whole new wrinkle. And again, it's private sector doing the work of government, although I'm sure the Board of Nursing would not deny it. The one exception, so we're protecting the public, a little bit different take on that. It protects students too. The Board of Nursing approves every nursing education program. And so if there's a nursing education program that's a loser, that won't allow you to take state boards, that has so many people who flunk state boards that it shouldn't be open, the Board of Nursing closes it. I believe the rule right now, and it's close enough, if you only have 75% passage 2 years in a row, you're put on warning as a school. All right? 75%, 2 years in a row. I don't know how I feel about that, but the level and the percent has been struck through research. It wasn't just pulled out of the air. But if you do worse than that, the state board will come in and look at, because you're the consumer, and there's a feeling, if you were admitted to a program, 75% of you should get out with a license. There will always be some, but it should not be over that fail. New Jersey was one of the first, I think it was one of the second states in the nation. The first was North Carolina, I think in 1903, then New York, New Jersey, etc. And the last was Georgia, only in the 60s. And when I get frail and old, don't take me to Georgia. I'm sorry, I'm offending someone, but their Medicaid rates are pathetic. I couldn't feed my dog, he died, but I couldn't feed him when he was alive for the amount they paid in nursing homes. And they have been very behind times on the licensing laws. They caught up now, but it took a long time. There are two types of licensing laws, permissive and mandatory. And permissive means you can, in order to call yourself a registered nurse, you must be licensed through examination, or you may be licensed. All of the states now are mandatory. However, Georgia was the last holdout, and now they're all mandatory. We talked about the multi-state compact and how New Jersey is not a participant in that program. And if you want to read up on it, the book has a good summary, and so does ncsbn.org. That's National Council of State Boards of Nursing .org. And the characteristics of the multi-state compact is that states who participate must have passed a law designating them as a member compact state, that it is not reciprocity. Get that in your head. It's not reciprocity. We have no reciprocity in the U.S. Each state regulates its own. But multi-state compact, you have to take the licensing exam in the state in which you live. But then it's valid to use in these other states. If you go to another state, you have to live according to the rules of that state. And the good part is it enables us to keep a master list of nurses in the United States. And it also allows us to get information quickly between states. If you had a disciplinary action against you in Utah, Iowa would know in 2 minutes. It goes on the electronic system over. However, in New York and New Jersey, if you have a disciplinary action against you in New Jersey, there are many nurses who escape to New York to get a license. Well, they don't escape. They go to New York. And they can pick up a license because the information is so slow getting there. And that's one of the good parts about the multi-state compact. Yeah?
Can you hold a license endorsement?
Yes, if you want to go to another state and you're not in a multi-compact state, you apply by endorsement. That's exactly.
Any other state?
Yes, in any other state. Since New Jersey has not got this multi-state compact, any one of the other 49 states plus territories you want to go to work in, you have to apply by endorsement. And you can do that right on their websites. Go to the website, okay? It makes things a bit tougher. And also, many states have CE requirements, like New York. You have to take periodic courses in child and spousal abuse, in substance abuse. There are about 5 things in New York you have to take every time you renew your license. They require. So if you go to New York, it's up to you to find out what their requirements are. Mandatory CE has become a requirement in most every state. You want to know how many, go look at NCSB and you click on mandatory CE. In New Jersey, you have to have 30 credits every 2 years. So education goes on. That's what I'm telling most of you. For many of you, your employer will provide this stuff. And look, nurses make a good living. And you should be taking continuing education in relation to your specialty populations. I told you that before. Not just whatever there is hanging around. But many of employers give courses at the workplace for you, even on work time. And you can do a lot of it online. You really, if you're hard up financially, don't have to spend a cent on CE. Everybody is giving it free. Now, I got 3 magazines yesterday. Each one had CE in it. You read the article, which was quite lengthy. You answer the questions. You either send it in electronically or in an envelope. And I could have gotten 6 credits, CE credits, if I did all the CE in those 3 magazines. It's ridiculous. Many business people are using it as a come on. Of course, then they want to sell the magazines, all right? But if you get the magazines in your specialty area, that's almost guaranteed that it will be CE in regard to your specialty. Why don't a lot of people like CE, mandatory CE? First of all, they say that professionals do not have to be pulled into continuing education. Professionals know they have to keep up to date for the rest of their lives, and so they want to do this, all right? Secondly, they say just because you took something doesn't mean you use it. And thirdly, every professional becomes specialized to a degree, and it is often hard to find things which are unique to your specialization. And all of these answers make sense, but every discipline is doing it. You know that. Law has requires a whole bunch of continuing education credits before you sign up for your next bar. And I swear they have other people listening. They have tapes. It's mostly tapes. Someone has made a fortune selling these tapes. And who listens to them? They have a tracker on it to make sure that they are listened to. And they have codes hidden in the tapes, very ingenious. A number hidden in the tape. So if you just bought them and never listened to them, you couldn't put these codes down. So you have to listen. And all doctors, the same thing. There's mandatory continuing education for physicians. So it's not just us. Chain of command. What do I mean by that? Be cautious whenever you're asked a question about a situation that the nurse Now, all right, this is going to depend on your ability to activate common sense. And I don't know if you all have common sense. It becomes a big issue. Okay. A doctor tells you to administer 50 milligrams of such and such a drug. You're not comfortable with that prescription. Do you give it and then question the doctor? Do you refuse to give it and question the doctor if you're a staff nurse? Or do you not give it and go to your supervisor? What do you do? Exactly, yes. Your supervisor is the next in the chain of command. Especially when you're a new nurse, you may not be that comfortable in your practice. When you're in practice longer, you inherently know what a therapeutic dose is. You still go to your supervisor, but you can tell him that this is way out of line for a dose for these symptoms, and your supervisor will really take your word for it. It's not that your supervisor necessarily knows more. Okay? Charting. Make sure that wherever charting is discussed, you're not giving opinions, you only give facts. Like, the patient looks like she had too much medication. Oh, come on. The patient's pulse is this. There's an apical radial defect. That's when you take the pulse and you listen to the heart at the same time. And there's a different number of beats at the pulse than at the heart. Big sign. Anything objective, you chart. I'm trying to think of some other examples. Okay. Patient is talking delusionally. You don't know what's delusional, particularly in this country with thousands of different ethnicities and cultures. Patient says, quote, "There was a man in my room this morning who doesn't belong there," end quote. Reported to security. All right? You only report what is objectively true. You don't ever report your opinions. Make sure you know what res ipsa loquitur and respondeat superior are. It's in that list of terms in your book. Respondeat superior means there's someone who's responsible for your actions. Take it apart, even if you didn't have Latin. In some language, this makes some sense. Respond to the superior. Respondeat superior. Even if you just know English, you should be able to figure this one out. A lawsuit is being appealed, and more and more the judge is finding the nurse responsible for their own actions. A good example, the one before that I didn't even bother. Students, faculty. We used to say that faculty were responsible for the actions of the students. No more. Students are responsible for their own actions if they have been taught something. All right? You are responsible for yourself, And that's why Rutgers requires that you get student insurance. Respondeat superior means the boss or the employer is responsible for the employee. This is not true in most nursing situations anymore. It used to be that judges used to use the captain of the ship philosophy. The nurse is the responsibility of the doctor. The nurse has to do what the employer wants. No. The nurse is responsible for his or her own behaviors. Res ipsa loquitur. The evidence speaks for itself. Loquitur, loquacious. What's a loquacious person? Please, enlarge your vocabularies. Master one more word a day. Go through the dictionary. You're going to think this is crazy. I have a son who went through the dictionary before he took his SATs. Never told me. He's a twin. His brother didn't do so good, but he read the dictionary. He can't write anything. He's no good qualitatively. Quantitatively, he's very good. Difference in personalities, but enlarge your vocabulary. Loquacious is someone who's talkative. So, here we have res ipsa loquitur. The evidence speaks itself. Evidence is res, ipsa is itself, loquitur speaks. So the evidence speaks for itself. The criteria for this legal doctrine, it's a legal doctrine, is that the circumstances are so blatantly out of the hands of the person who was harmed that they're in no way responsible. And I gave you the example of the woman who was having a tubal ligation, who had the wrong tubes hooked up and died on the table in St. Barnabas. This was about 7 years ago. It was the largest suit ever in the state of New Jersey. I don't know if it's nationally too. Very large suit. She was a young woman. She was a stockbroker with unlimited potential, and they sued for her lifelong earnings, and they won because it was just blatantly out of her hands. Res ipsa loquitur. The evidence speaks for itself. Bryan White Act. Remember that? That is for communities that have a very high incidence of AIDS. And TEFRA is the legislation that mandated that the government institute a prospective pricing system for all of its initiatives. And then many of the states picked that up, like ERGs, OASIS. That's a prospective pricing system. That's the development of a case mix. And they struck the fees, the price of the fees, based on this case mix. DRGs was the diagnosis of the patient, their age, whether they have complications, remember? And based on that, there was a price put on their care, and that's what the hospital got. So, TEFRA. And NCNR is the National Center for Nursing Research. That's where most of your research dollars come from. And the Good Samaritan Act is based on assumed consent. We're assuming that a person would consent to be cared for by a passerby, if that passerby had any skill. GRANT is the program for nurses who are substance abusers. It's an alternative to disciplinary action. the nurse's identity is shielded, and she or he is allowed to continue, is treated individually. Some are asked to surrender their license temporarily. Others are allowed to keep their license and allowed to work, but there are other requirements. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it's the Nurses in Recovery Act. And it is managed and operated by the Professional Association on behalf of nurses. So it's another example of private, public coming together. All right, sources of law, statutory is the legislature, the Congress. Administrative are the rules and regs. Case law is through the courts. Common law is law that derives from common practice. It's none of these. Any questions? The rights of people, there has been a lot of discussion in your papers and in class about dying, about euthanasia. Active euthanasia is not allowed in this country. We have physician-assisted suicide in 3 states. It's very carefully regulated. It's not used presumptively. It's very tightly regulated. Passive euthanasia, you could say, is allowing a person to die, allowing them to die, when they would be dying anyway. That's important for you to hear. It is not killing, mercy killing. That word, I don't even know what it is. There are some foreign countries that have active euthanasia, you could call it that, but active voluntary euthanasia, the Netherlands, and there's one more. But passive euthanasia, just allowing a person to die. And there were a lot of court cases that had to be fought before we had that right. At one time, if drugs were started in intensive care to keep the blood pressure up, which kept the person alive, you couldn't stop that. Now, if families go in and they're aware of the preference of the dying and they want that medication stopped, they can say, stop it, and it is legal, all right? And I don't care what physician, get the president of the hospital in here, all right? But passive euthanasia is just allowing a person to die. And self-determination acts were the first legal sanction for these things, with living will and medical power of attorney. Living wills, as I just said, if they're too old, and if they go to a court, a judge is going to say, listen, a lot has happened in medicine in 7-10 years. I don't know if I could accept this. But what they can accept is a durable power of attorney. So the judge might say, who has power of attorney? Who is this person? Bring him in here and let me talk to him. And so you get to the same route through a different aspect of the law. Do not resuscitate orders must be signed by a physician. And it must be that the person affected by it has asked for this if they're conscious and cognizant. You don't just institute PNRs because you want to. The rights of minors, we talked about that. The informed minor is used very commonly in our society. Judges will ask to see a minor privately, and get some sense of what they want. It's amazing how many children with terminal diseases realize that they're going to die. Because sometimes the concept of death is a little different than what we would have. But they realize they're going to die, and they don't want to keep on with the treatment. And when a judge speaks to them, they'll give the truth versus if their parents speak to them. They're very sensitive to the emotions. And then the answer is not the judge laying down the law. For most judges, although I don't know how wise they are, I hope they're wise, the agenda would be working with family to have them accept what the child wants. You just don't move on what the child wants and write off people who are very involved and who love that child. But it gives a judge a sense of how sophisticated and how mature the child is. All right, we talked about the Patient's Bill of Rights and that it isn't. It's a voluntary thing that says self-evident truths. It says things like you have to pay the doctor or the provider, it should say now, but you should read that over. It's in your book. Now, in ethics, which is the second largest area, make sure you know the principles. We've talked about them. Malfeasance, beneficence, trust, justice, etc. Know what they mean. And know that ethics, the law, and morality are three different things. Know that ethics is a very sophisticated thing. It's picking principles to guide your practice and weighing those principles against the real situations. The law is the policies we have to live by, or we descend into being like animals. And the law takes so long to pass in this country and is exposed to so much debate because we want it to be acceptable to everyone. And the law is usually vague, and like I say, you could walk an elephant through it. It's broad purposely to allow different interpretations with time. And morality are religious-based principles. And you're allowed your morality, but don't try to foist it on a patient. All right? You see how they think, and if your morality is so troubling that you can't really take care of a patient who doesn't see their life going according to your morality, absent yourself. I don't care if you have to go and go there. You have no right to practice it if you're going to impose your morality. And that goes for religious hospitals too. There are many people in religious hospitals, be it St. Michael's or Holy Name or St. Elizabeth's, who don't profess Catholicism and Catholic doctrines to their infinite extent. So you have to be careful. You know that your practice is curtailed to a degree working in a Catholic hospital. If you don't like it, leave. All right? But don't profess that and levy it on a patient. Okay? So be clear on those principles, on the theoretical framework. Justified paternalism, I put this down because this is one of my biggest gripes. It's one patient you're looking at in justified paternalism. It's not a group. It's one patient. And the issue is whether requirements or policies are being expected of a person when they resist. We're not Nazi Germany, or, it's up to them. All right? It's up to them, and that's what you have to learn, patience. The workplace. Some very important things here. The Taft-Hartley amendments. Those are the amendments which allow nurses to be represented for collective bargaining. Collective bargaining in this country is based on an adversarial ethic, like it or not. If you come from someplace where the unions are singing in harmony with management, it ain't here, okay? And we're generally, overwhelmingly, an anti-union country. At our height, we were 36% unionized. That was in the 50s. I think we're down to maybe 16%. And unions do have a purpose. I believe in unions when you need it. Nobody gets a union for fun. And when you need it, you should get it. And there are rules about how you get a union, etc. And nobody strikes because they want to either. Because when you're striking, you're not earning a living. To strike in a healthcare facility, you have to give 10-day notice. And there's a whole psychology of how the strike is used, which is beyond this class or if a union is going to take a hospital on strike, usually the first things they look for is whether the economic centers are going to go out with them. Now, what do I mean by economic? Where is the money made? The money is made in the OR and in emergency, almost totally. So they want to be sure those nurses are standing with them. There's a whole psychology of unionization and strike, and it's merited sometimes. Nurses, the same as other workers in hospitals, have not been treated very well, and sometimes it's necessary, but it's a last resort. And in essential industries, and healthcare is essential, it's frequent that the discontents of striking members is settled by arbitration. Arbitration is not a service provided by the union. It's a freestanding service provided by the courts. And many nurses, I told you this several weeks ago that I know of, retired nurses, have gone to school to be prepared to be arbitrators. And they're magnificent. Judges think they're magnificent because their interpersonal skills are highly honed. And they do very well as arbitrators. But arbitration, like you hear during strikes in New York, police and fire, they were made, and there is binding and non-binding arbitration. But I wonder how much good non-binding arbitration. Usually it's binding. In other words, you present your case to the arbitrator comes up with a solution, and if you agree to arbitration, you have to accept that solution. Fatigue, I just put that down because it's one of the biggest challenges to nurses, fatigue, combination of mental and physical. It's not always physical fatigue. And in fact, OSHA and NIOSH, remember those two, have done a lot to try to make demands to try to combat things like back injuries, fatigue, etc. They've done a lot to try to make the workplace more palatable. Now, there will be historical figures you'll be asked about, and rake through your mind and remember who we've talked about, or just go in your book and see who we've talked about. Who is the pioneer that established the thought-up and established the associate degree programs. Come on, somebody.
Is it Mildred Monk?
Yes, you got all the answers there. Mildred Montag from Teachers College. Who is the nurse that founded the Grand Street Settlement House in New York, which is the precursor of the Visiting Nurse Service of New York? If you watch TV, you see their ads on TV, wonderful ads. But you don't watch TV, or you don't watch those channels maybe, but they have wonderful ads. Visiting Nurse Service of New York, the largest visiting nurse service in the world. Who was the lady that founded that? And she founded it during the influenza epidemic of the turn of the century. Yes, Lillian Wald. Good. Yep, Lillian Wald. She did battle with the health commissioners in New York to establish it around public health, to try to control the epidemic at the turn, right after, well, it was after World War I, think, the influenza epidemic that really hit the whole world, but she was interested in New York. Let's see. Who was the first commandant of the Army Nurse Corps? That'll get you. We talked about her. There's a picture in your book of her leading the Allied medical forces into Paris at the end of World War II. And I said that in class, which are the things you remember, that if you look at pictures of her over time, there was something wrong with her. I thought some type of hormonal disease, something. And the Army has had calls out for someone to do her biography for years. And no one, they have funds to do a biography of her. What was her name? Think. Anyone? Julia Stimson. She's not on the exam either, but I think you should know some things as intelligent people. Okay, any questions, any of you? No? All right, so Friday at, 11:45, right? In room 123, Ackerson. I think it's the big hall as soon as you come in the front doors. And I'll see you then, and good luck. And don't kill yourself studying. There's no need. If you've been listening, look at your notes, go back and look through the book, and trust your mind. Okay. Yeah. Yes, it's right. Tyler, it went to last night to Tyler at rutgers.edu. And it's on. I don't know, because it went before too. But you know what I'll do? I will download a copy and bring it. Right. Yeah, I'll bring it. But no, it